But thank you very much, Ms. Silentman. We are on that.
Mr. Secretary.
Go ahead, Mr. Montoya.
If I may make a comment regarding that, I know we generally don't, but because of the severity of the question and the comment that was made, I certainly would ask the superintendent for the consideration of just delivering to the sites and allowing them to then request replenishment. But if they had them on site first, I think that would be more beneficial. Thank you.
We can do that.
Thank you.
Any other comments from the board?
No, I don't.
Okay, we'll move on then to three reports and fundraising request, KCHS boys and girls basketball, fan pledge donations by Mr. Manning.
Good afternoon, board members, Mr. Carlson. Yeah, we're requesting approval to run a fundraiser called Fan Pledge. It's a fundraising. I guess you could say a company who helped high schools fundraise. Multiple schools throughout the state have used this Fan Pledge donation, and the way it works is the players in the program create a contact list, and then in that contact list text messages are sent to those individuals, and then those individuals can donate to the program however much or however little money they want to donate to, whether it's boys or girls basketball program.
Any comments? Questions from the board?
I have no questions, but except to express my full support for Mr. Manning and the fundraising request. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. So. Mr. Montoya?
Yeah, just to make sure if I heard correctly, it goes to the basketball programs, but not assigned to either or, but just to the basketball programs in general.
No, it would be separate. Boys basketball or girls basketball, they would create their own separate lists, and then those individuals who donate to the boys, it goes to the boys program, and then yeah, there's basically two separate donation or ways that it won't be just one basketball program.
All right, I just wanted to clarify. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else, Mr. Manning?
No, that's it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Item B, fundraising request. Shiprock High School student activity, selling posters for each sport with their schedule and team pictures by Chester Atsedy. Do we have Chester Atsedy on? Okay, we'll move on to the next one. C, fundraiser request, Newcomb High School Athletic Student Services, Fall Athletics apparel sale. And that's by Gilla Curley. Excuse me if I didn't pronounce that wrong, right? Gila, okay. Where'd she go? She went off.
She's there.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. sorry, my microphone's weird. I always have to unplug it and plug it back in. But anyway, so this is a fall athletics apparel sale that we want to do through BSN's online website. So the way it works is BSN will create a store with different types of apparel that will highlight volleyball, football, and cross country for the fall season. And fans will be able to purchase it directly through the website, and then BSN will send the profit.
I apologize, Gala, I couldn't, there was something wrong with the mic or something. I couldn't understand that. You want to try again?
Yeah, can you guys hear me clearly now, or no?
Yes, I can.
Hold on, last time I had to bring the mic real close. Okay, can you guys hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, just don't look at the camera, it's all over my classroom. But what I explained was that the way this fundraiser works is that BSN creates a like a store on the website, and they will build it providing apparel that showcases volleyball, cross country, and football for the fall season. And anybody who wants to purchase them can go onto the website and buy them, and then BSN sends the profit.
Okay. Any questions from the board, comments?
I have a comment again to express my support for Newcomb Athletics and their project. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. So.
I don't have any questions, too. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Haskey. Mr. Montoya?
I have none either, thank you. Except Miss Curly Moore will comment. Just keep up the good work, Miss Curly.
Okay. Ms. Curley, do you have anything else to say?
No, I think our basketball coach is up next, so if I need to have them or anything like that.
All right, thank you very much. Moving on to D, fundraising request, Newcomb High School boys basketball program. Mr. Patrick Boone.
Oh, ja, hallo, tedeschi's start the Sunday bus piani das chilo, Pulicine das mellow. Yeah, no, wanted to do a fundraising project for our boys basketball program to pay for needed things that we need to do, pay for tournaments, hotels, meals, and sports apparel for our students. So one of the things I came across was discount card sales, and the way it goes is they send us a list of merchants that is willing to offer discounts from local vendors, and we send it back, and we sell a card for $20, and then this is good for a whole year. So the cards are $20 each. And at the same time, they offered me a free fundraising program to sell popcorn. So on this one, I just, the students will get an email, text with the website, and then people will buy their popcorn for $20, and then the profit will come back to the school, to the boys basketball program. So, and if you scroll down, there's what the cards look like. So we can put all your favorite food store on that card. And that list is all the merchants that they already have and with the company, so you can email me your favorite place to eat.
Just real quick, how much are the discount cards?
They're $20. It's gonna be $20. So. And it's good for a whole year.
I've seen these used before. They work pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
Any comments from the board?
Where can I buy
I have
one?
none.
When will they be available?
Well, once you guys okay it, then we can go ahead and start making the arrangements. So they said if I get it out by next week, it should be the end of October.
Okay.
Okay, I have no questions, thank you.
Mr. Montoya?
I have no questions, thank you.
I don't have any questions either. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else, Mr. Boone?
No, yeah, thank you very much.
Oh, yeah,
Nado.
Oh,
On to E, unique trip request. Curtin Middle School Travel Club, educational, by Sherilyn Lee.
Good evening.
You're in.
I'm here.
I was looking for you up here, sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. Good evening, board members and Mr. Carlson. I'm coming on behalf of the KMS Travel Club. So prior to the pandemic, KMS had this club already implemented, and we had already done 8 trips prior to the pandemic. Once it hit, we stopped doing the trips, and since we quit, we just wanted to take into consideration our families and students, and we didn't want to expose them to, you know, any remaining COVID issues. But in the past year, we have gotten so many requests, not just from parents, but from previous students who want their younger siblings to attend these trips. So they made a very good, strong effort to communicate that to us. And so with that consideration, I did a interest meeting back at the end of, back in May, and the response was very strong to continue the trips. So the trip is going to be 6 days long. We will fly out of Albuquerque and then land in Washington, D.C. We will stay 3 days in Washington, D.C., and then the remaining days we'll travel up to New York City. We will visit numerous monuments, memorials, colleges, and historical sites that are relevant to our country, but also with the emphasis of showing our students where the cultural relevance is for their native culture. So for instance, we would go to, I just drew a blank, I'm sorry. Oh yes, the American Indian Museum, the Smithsonian Museum in Washington, D.C. There's also one in New York. Both museums are truly different from each other, and they both bring in a lot of historical relevance to how land was taken, what happened to the tribes. We do have 574 federally recognized tribes in the U.S., so we want to make sure that our students are well-rounded and get a great experience. I do right now have one of my chaperones with me. All the chaperones will be first aids, CPR certified, and like I said, we've done these trips in the past and we'd like to continue them at KMS. So we are hoping for your support so that we can take our students out to DC and New York. Thank you.
Any questions or comments from the board? Do you have anything else?
Yes, I just wanted to mention that, we are not asking for any money from the school district.
We appreciate that.
All students are responsible for raising their own funds or making their own payments, so none of that is tied to our district, so there's zero money from the district.
Okay, that was my only, was going to be my only request to know how that was gonna be funded, so. Thank you.
Yep, sounds
I
like a
had
lot
a
of fun.
question, really
Wish I
quick.
could go. I've been there before, so there's a lot to see and do, and you don't have a lot of time to do it. Hope you guys can pack it in.
Yes, we'll present when we get back.
Thank you very much.
I believe board president was chiming in.
Secretary Wells, how many students are going on this trip?
Right now, we have about 30 kids that are interested in going, and there'll be three chaperones. It'll be a 10-to-1 ratio.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
I do have a question.
Go ahead.
So looking at the date, May 29th through June 3rd, that's technically after school, is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, I know there have been others who have gone, I don't know if they would call them field trips, but certainly kids going to other locations, whether it be on spring break, which is not during school, and the teachers utilizing their own personal time or for trips like that. I just appreciate the fact that you're bringing it to us, and the fact that you're also motivated enough, and the students are motivated enough to raise the funding for that trip. So I hope you're very successful, and they learn quite a bit. So thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on to item F, report on completion of doctoral study dissertation on administrators participants of challenges to support the academic achievement of Navajo high school students. Mr. Begay?
Yes, I'm on. I'm wondering if I can share my screen, Ms. Ray.
Before we begin, can I get verification that this has gone through the IRB, Navajo Nation IRB?
Is somebody here qualified to answer that question?
Yeah, to my knowledge, I think it has. He's just doing a closeout report for the research he conducted already. That's what I understand. Is that correct, Mr. Begay?
Yes, and in addition to that, none of the studies were conducted with any schools on the reservation, so the Navajo IRB was not needed for my approval for my specific study.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. Good question.
All right, go ahead, Mr. Begay.
Am I allowed to share my screen, Ms. Ray? Awesome. And I won't do death by PowerPoint, so I'll keep this brief and fast. There will be a couple of slides that I do stay on a little bit longer than others, but again, I don't want to give you too much information. So again, my name is Derek Begay. Kiani Ashlan Bidni Bashachin Tachini Dashache Kiani Dashanala. And I completed my dissertation and got approval through the school board of, let me start. Okay, that's a better view. And I completed my dissertation, and I asked several school districts in New Mexico where Central Consolidated was able to approve that and allow me to interview some of their administrators at the secondary schools that you guys have within your district. So I appreciate that and the board's support in that, and everyone else that was involved. So again, just real briefly, I'm going to summarize these slides. I'm not going to read them verbatim, but the information will be there. So my dissertation was really looking at the challenges that principals have to support Navajo students within their schools. And there's not a lot of research or information about that, so that is kind of why I looked to handle that. The questions that I asked were really looking at the needs and challenges that principals had within their schools, dealing with specifically with Navajo students and to help them become successful academically. And the second question that I raised was, how are they prioritizing their approach and planning towards supporting these Navajo students of their high schools as well? My participants included principals and assistant principals. I did include another public school district and then 2 tribally controlled schools within the state of New Mexico. And you can see my criteria there on the left. As I went through my interview process, I provided 8 questions, and there was some follow-up questions, so it could have been 8 to 12 questions depending on the conversation. And as you can see, I had to group these, and this is kind of the raw data. So anytime an administrator responded with, achievement gap or native classes, based on the questions that were asked, if there was some issues that were directly involved, like COVID, those were specifically identified, and so this is kind of a look of that raw data from all of my 8 interviews, and those data became my themes. And so again, I had 3 big themes that came from this study, and was really looking at what were those challenges for Navajo students. And part of that became looking at the dynamics that our Navajo families face within various communities, again, through the state of New Mexico, not just specifically within the Central Consolidated demographic, but those challenges were kind of throughout all of the different communities that I did interview administrators at. So again, part of those were, poverty and adult responsibilities, meaning if they had livestock, they kind of took on to those, or if they had to have a job to help support themselves or their families. It kind of lists, so some of those were the biggest themes. A lot of our families have to rely on socioeconomics or government assistance programs to be successful. So those were one of the barriers that kept being identified by some of these administrators, which was very helpful to kind of pinpoint some of the ways we can provide supports for these, not only the students, but their families as well. And that included limited transportation, having school supplies, and those different things. So I know there's food banks available. So looking at those resources and how we can bring those into our school system so that families are aware of that is some of the solutions to these themes. But that was the big major theme 1. And then theme 2 was looking at, we're really approaching education with looking at the entire student population to benefit all students. Mm-hmm. And so I'm going to talk a little bit more about what that means and what that looks like. And then that quote there at the bottom just says, for decades there have been a widening achievement gap between Native American and white students, and that's from national studies. I think the National Center for Education has a 2016 and a 2020 study that helps show that, and I'm sure the most recent one that's going to do that, it took me a couple years to finish this, so the data might seem a little dated, but it's still relevant. Theme 3 looked at one of the addressing of what identifiers that principals or administrators had at these schools. And part of that was, again, I had to code this within what would be called Native issues, and that could be the example of, teachers or staff on campus that were Native or non-Native. And then I really want to point out this second quote here. So 5 of my 8 participants perceive that a lack of empathetic cultural knowledge deters student learning. And 2 of the most frequent reasons for Native American students being absent or dropping out of school were due to teachers' attitudes towards Indigenous students. So just kind of being aware of that. Again, those are studies and research that was provided, the sources cited there. But that information is very impactful for our public schools that service a lot of Indigenous cultures, Navajo students specifically, where making sure that that's not a barrier is going to help us keep students in school and hopefully decrease attendance rates, as that's a big issue within a lot of our public schools, schools throughout the Navajo Nation, whether they're tribally controlled or bureau funded and operated. And then lastly, again, back to that point of having someone who knows that cultural knowledge. Again, our participants, 6 of the 8, believe that this factor was essential to the dynamics of classroom support. And again, it's blocked out on my screen, but you can see it there. So again, these were the 3 big things that came from that. And then again, just some of the recommendations. Again, I'm not going to read this all, but looking at providing further studies to help support and specify what research is needed and how we can help administrators be successful in their walks with their teachers in the schools that service a lot of indigenous communities and Navajo student academic achievement specifically. So again, I have a list of different things we can do to provide further studies. Again, those will probably be other doctoral students that go through this process. Looking at elementary students, are those trends the same? Because again, within our communities, we have a holistic elementary, mid school, and high school at those various communities. So making sure that we're identifying and addressing those issues sooner rather than later is very beneficial. And then in addition to that, the implications on the right side just show a lot of the research that was utilized. And again, I'm going to share this out with the board, and you can have that as public information, but I'm not going to read through those, but it just talks about the achievement gap and how schools are performing within our communities, whether they're public, BIE, or tribally controlled as well. And then the biggest part, again, of this is, I have social change implications. So it's looking at, how students can benefit from these if we share our knowledge. If we look to find those who have been successful, who are Native American and come back to our communities, those who are teachers, administrators, or work within an educational system can come back and provide that support, whether it's through just talking about their journeys, and building that connection with students is very important and vital for that success. And so just looking at that as a positive social change that we need to kind of go above and beyond of what we're currently doing, and not just the education piece, but building those connections within our school systems to help that relationship building with our community members and our students who are going through our K-12 system. So that's the social change implications. And then the conclusion, I am going to read this verbatim because I do think it's very important, and it's that second bullet. And it's looking at policies must be considered for Indigenous students that include Native staff in schools, incorporating Native classes in schools, training non-Native staff, and then understanding dynamics of our community members, educating administrators and staff of the persistent negative issues that decrease educational progress. So to sum that up, it's looking at, what are negative factors and how can we get that and eliminate that from the conversation, moving away from the victim mentality to solution-based and answering those questions so that we can get support for our students. And then lastly, addressing the Native issues, which again will be useful solutions with academic achievement in mind. So those are kind of the grounds of the conclusion that I have based on these interviews from the various staff members at, again, the 2 public school districts that I interviewed on and the tribally controlled schools. And then next steps, I have here some solutions, again, specifically for schools that have, schools and school districts that have high Indigenous student populations. And then also public schools, and again, kind of some simple steps that can be incorporated. Hopefully they're simple. And then again, because I interviewed members from tribally controlled schools, that's also listed there at the bottom. But again, I think this is helpful information, and I'm giving you the speed version of what my dissertation entailed. And again, just going out to appreciate the district being supportive of this in my journey, and then also providing individuals from their schools to participate in the interview process. And again, I think I interviewed about 4 from Central Consolidated, and again, just want to thank those out. I can't name them publicly, but I do appreciate them taking the time out of their days during May and June of last year when it was ending school. So with that feedback, I've been allowed to come up with study, provide next steps for school districts and schools, and looking to share this information not only with school districts that participated, but also at the state level to kind of help navigate through some of these systems that incorporate a lot of the need for our students, and directly dealing with the Yazzie Martinez case, and providing that support for schools and students that we can be more successful in looking at that data. So again, I'm not going to read these bullet by bullet, but I will share this with you as well. And that concludes my presentation. And if we have times for questions, I'm going to do that. So I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing if I can figure this out. Give me 1 second. Okay.
Mr. Montoya, you have your hand up.
Yes, I do. Thank you for that, Mr. Begay. It's even the condensed version is very informative, and it starts me to think of a couple of concerns that I have. Did you come across any what would be recognized as soft bigotry of low expectations or in respects to the empathetic cultural knowledge and the deterrence of that? Did you find that?
Yeah, so I think depending on which administrator I asked, again, between all of the school districts that I interviewed, I think that was one of the key things that surprisingly came from assistant principals who were acknowledging that we're not challenging or we're not thinking that some of our students are going to be as successful as they are. So kind of having that low expectation is resulting in low performance. And so I think that's one of the things where we still have to kind of have that rigor within our education, but also those supports to help that rigor. And then that doesn't just include the academic supports, but also the idea of going to a trade school or a college is within reach. And I think that message often gets misconstrued whether it's a pathway to get to graduation, but nothing supportive after that, all kind of trickle down to some of the responses that fall within that category that you're mentioning.
Very good, because along with teacher efficacy is certainly the expectations of the educator upon the class, and the educator believing and setting a high bar for those students in that classroom, no matter who they are, what race, what ethnicity they may be, but to have a high expectations and to expect only the best from them and certainly challenge them. I think you're certainly on the right path to see that and understand that, and more importantly, acknowledge that from your studies. So I appreciate that. The other one that I had regarding, did you look at or was the idea of identity formation considered within that study that you did?
Can you repeat that? Identity information or?
Identity formation.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, so I think part of that, and again, this is where I think it would be interesting to hear the elementary and mid-school level administrators speaking to this, because I think they would provide a narrative of when that possibly changes, because I think that is a question where when students get to high school, they're either on a path that they know or a path that's provided to them through their family history or the family priority or importance, because that was another question that came up. And most of the time we're going to have 75% of our students, whether they're native or non-native, go into the path that they have a relative in. So I think that identity formation of what they're studying or what the priorities are really reflected in education. And when that changes is something that I would like to dig deeper on, and identifying that with our elementary and mid schools at that level. So that's something that I think was briefly touched on, but I think those were trends that we're seeing through, tell me about your family and what do they do, what is their background, and how that relates to student success too, whether they're, college educated or not. But I think those all play major factors, specifically with Navajo families and the success of students.
Well, absolutely, and that's quite often that's tied directly to the language as well, too. That identity formation of language are one and the same for a lot of people, especially out here on Navajo. So I appreciate it again, and thank you for allowing me to ask a couple of questions. Appreciate it.
Thank you for your questions.
Any other questions from the board or comments?
In the research that you conducted, did you find any examples of schools that were doing things well in terms of supporting student academic achievement through cultural sensitivity and so forth, and other schools that were not doing such a good job? And based on that, did you notice any statistical differences in terms of student outcomes or achievement?
Yeah, I think, you find more of the gaps of the ones that are not doing well more than you find the ones that are doing well. So I think that was kind of highlighted, and I think that's possibly also the reason where several school districts, public school districts within New Mexico, did not want to participate in this study, because I sent them a generic view of what questions I was asking. And to be realistic and blunt, and to get this conversation going, there was not a lot of participants, because I think that's really where a lot of school districts are lacking. So again, I think there's rooms for improvement everywhere, But to find that through, you know, even the process of getting participants for my study was really revealing in that question that you asked. So again, I think there's ways to kind of navigate through that, and some school districts have onboarding for those who are new to their district and new to the area, but also that are, you know, non-native coming to teach native students. So I think those are some kind of broad views to look at that, and specific questions and specific relations on what that needs to look like for people coming to teach native students, or having a blend of backgrounds within a classroom is very needed and needs to be given that expectation to those new employees, especially those who are not from the area, to kind of get a culture awakening before they get culture shock. And so I think that's one of the things where looking at school districts, what are best practices and how can we relate that to all of our schools, not only within Central Consolidated, but, you know, the surrounding area for all the schools that have indigenous student populations. And then remind me of your second question. Sorry, I don't want to forget it.
Did you notice any statistical differences of schools that were doing well in terms of outcomes, data-wise?
Right, and so I feel like, again, with seeing the schools that I tried to get, some parochial schools, some schools that have magnet programs within their schools, you know, an IB program or an AP program or a dual enrollment program. Sadly, I didn't get them to be participants, although that was requested to kind of see what, you know, was doing well in those schools. But sadly, they did not want to participate in those questions. But I think that's a gap in some of the information that could be provided to help us come up with solutions that would benefit our indigenous students and students within the various communities that we have, because I think they have that kind of choice to go to those schools that they want to, but finding out what our best practices and shared with our schools is the next thing we need to get to, and not being so siloed in our work for education for our student success. If we can share that information, all of our students, all of our teachers, and all of our administrators and school boards, they all succeed when that happens. So that's kind of my response to your question.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments from the board?
I'd just like to comment, I'd just like to thank you for getting this conversation started. I know that we always have those kind of questions, but I'm glad that your research is going to start conversation in regards to best practices for our students. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Haskey and Mr. Montoya, Mr. Soul. Do you have anything else, Mr. Begay?
Anything else, Mr. Begay?
He's gone silent.
I think he dropped off.
I think so.
Yeah, he dropped off.
Okay, Ms. Theodore, I think you're next.
Good evening, board members, superintendent, Mr. So, Ms. Wells, and those online. So we have one feeder route, per capita feeder route mileage reimbursement this year from Newcomb. This is a continuance from last year and the year before. Student is now in 6th grade, and the Guardians live 4 miles north of Sanasti 5012, so we do not have a bus in that area. They're the only family that live out that way that are in school, so we offer mileage reimbursement to the nearest bus stop, which is there at Navajo Route 5012. So one-way mileage is 4, so number of trips is 4, and so it's total of 16 miles per day. And for he turned his application in back the first day, so it'd be 185 days for the entire school year. And we only pay them, we reimburse them for the days that they are actually in school when they ride the bus. If they miss school, then we don't reimburse them for those days. I stand for questions.
So do they apply, do they request this each,
Each year, yes.
okay,
Yeah, because it only goes by year, so for 185 days for the number of school days for this year. So we start on the day we receive their application.
and, then we pay them on a monthly basis, or,
Every month, we send out a voucher, and they get their attendance verified by the school. Then that voucher is sent to me, and I do the calculation of what it's $6.40 per day.
Okay.
So,
thank you.
mhm.
Any other questions?
Just real quick, aside from Newcomb Middle School, are there any other per capita feeder route agreements for other students? Because I know I've seen that with other schools, like in Kirtland or some of the other schools where the bus routes are not readily available.
We don't have any right now. This is the only
Okay.
one that we received so far.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Mhm.
Are there any other questions from the board?
I don't have any
I have
questions,
none.
thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Theodore.
Thank you.
Accounts payable, disbursements, Ms. Herbie?
Hi, good evening, everyone. Board members, Superintendent Carlson, online visitors. So with our board report summary for the month of September, or actually the month of August, our total disbursement for accounts payable for operational is 3.9 million for the month, 5.4 million for the year from July to August. Activities disbursement, $20,241. Year to date, $22,973. Our outstanding check listing for operational is $436,645. For the year is $438,165. For the activities account, $20,241. Year to date is the same dollar amount. Our expenditures for the general funds, $11,000 to $23,000. For the whole month of August is $5,069,675. Year to date is $10,411,478. Of those totals, Impact Aid Fund 15,100 is 1.7 million. Year to date is 5.8 million. Fund 15,200 for the month is 170,000, and year to date is the same. For our grant funds, total disbursement amount is 2.4 million. Year to date is 3 million. Carl Perkins, $3,008 for the month and for the year. $0 for Fund 24176, Carl Perkins redistribution. Johnson O'Malley, $9,175 for the month of August, $10,877 for the year. Impact Aid SPED, $32,792, same dollar amount for the year. Impact Aid Indian Ed, $443,287 for the month, $855,543 for the year. Capital outlay, total distribution is 1.4 million for the month and 3.7 million for the year. For our revenue, for general funds, 11,000 to 23,000. Total received is 5.7 million for the month. Total for the year is 11,224,000. No revenue received for impact aid or ad valorem. Grant funds for the month, total received is 4.6 million. Total for the school year is 8.7 million. Of that amount, Carl Perkins, 31,185, and Johnson O'Malley, $24,046. Year to date for JOM is $56,575. Capital outlay received is 23,318 and 49,638 for the year. And that's the summary report for expenditures and revenue.
So that's it for the disbursements?
Yeah, yes, that's all of our revenue and all of our expenditures.
Okay. Looks like you've got the next one, purchase orders.
Yep. The next report is gonna be the purchase orders. There's two of them. One is gonna be for purchase orders over 60,000. And then the other one is for purchase orders for amounts between 3,500 and 10,000.
So with these, they all went out to bid, like for the Stepping Stones group. I noticed that it's out of Chicago. Is that service going to be provided locally, or is it? It's for speech therapy services.
They would be locally, so they contract out, they subcontract out.
Okay.
Any other questions from the board? Ms. Askey?
I don't have any questions, thank you.
Mr. Montoya?
I have none either, thank you.
Okay. Go ahead to the next one.
Okay, next one is gonna be the utility comparison report. And for the month of August, total paid for utilities is 470,000. And then for last year, it was 598,000. Of these amounts, 470,000 paid out of impact aid. And last year, it was 432,000 paid out of the 11,000 operational and 166,000 out of the impact aid. And then we've included the 5-year on that summary sheet as well.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you. Is there any questions from the board?
No.
I have no questions, thank you.
Mr. Montoya?
I have none. I have none, thank you.
Okay, last report.
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, so the last report is gonna be the budget adjustment report. We have 6, and the first one is for Fund 31701 to adjust our budget to match audited cash, 553,563. Next one is Fund 12,000 teacherage. We just made an adjustment within the functions. It's no increase, no decrease. Next, number 3 is gonna be Fund 25184, Indian Ed, budget increase for $414,411. Line 4, Fund 27516, budget increase, $28,978. Line 5, Fund 24330, transfer, moving funds from the 1,000 function. Line 6, Fund 27536, increase or an initial bar, $33,427. Any questions?
No,
Are
I have
there
no
any-
questions.
Are there any questions from the board?
I don't have any questions, thank you.
Mr. Montoya?
I have no questions. I was just looking at the documents, but I have no questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
I guess kind of like going back to the budget and so forth, I guess my questions is gonna be generally about, what, is the district doing all it can to make sure that we have maximum enrollment for the, what is it, our 40-day and 100-day student count? Because I'm not sure what those numbers are gonna look like, what our projections are gonna be.
In terms of revenue for
Yeah.
the 40-day,
Yes. When is the deadline for the 40-day count?
the 40 day is gonna be October, it's usually in October. Do you know when 40 day is right off? I think October 7th, 11th?
October 9th.
So October 9th is 40 day.
Okay. Mr. Venturino, you want to chime in to help Herbie out with that answer there? Kind of let me
Yeah,
know
so
kind of what we're doing.
October 9th is the 40th day count. That's a Wednesday, and that will be the numbers that the state will do some adjustment, membership adjustment, and determine basically the budget that will be coming through after the 40th day.
So usually in the
I have a
past,
question.
what the district will do is they'll they'll do the robocalls and encourage attendance on that day. Transportation will do the same thing. Curriculum will do the same as well. So they'll do the robocalls and encourage attendance on those days. Some schools, I don't know, Christy, if you've seen anything, are doing any incentives. That part of it, I haven't seen anything. Yeah, so she's seeing some incentives from the schools, encouraging attendance.
Okay.
Mr. Montoya?
Superintendent, do we have a preliminary 20-day count that is utilized by the school district?
We do. We actually use that at DFT meetings we just had. I don't have it accessible, but I bet you if I just ramble on for a few minutes, Mr. Venturino probably could come up with it. Because he would probably have them more readily available. Are there numbers you're looking for specifically, or just kind of generalities?
Just in generality, to give us kind of a starting point of where we are and what it might look like for the 40-day. So I don't think that'd be too much of a change either direction from a 20 to 40.
I would imagine not.
So
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And so that is included, Mr. Venturino has been including that in the director reports each week. So if you've looked at that section under the DART, he does have those numbers each week listed. I don't know, Mr. Venturino, do you have the 20-day at the tip of your fingers over there?
Yeah, it's about 4,546 students accounted for the 20th day. This is about almost 200 difference from last year, which is or was kind of like our trend for the district. Like every year, we're decreasing by about 200 kids, roughly.
that had been my assumption from where it was, and some of the ports, when you look at 2018, when they were talking about the proposed shutdown at PNM, the state legislature, and we actually were in a worse situation than their professional expert predictions. So again, all those numbers matter to Mr. So's point of revenue and funding. Thank you.
Anything else from the board?
No.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Wells, we do have Mr. Atsedy has
I,
joined.
I see that.
Okay.
Welcome, Mr. Atsedy. You're late. Glad you could make it.
Oh my gosh. I do apologize. I was on my way down that way, and then I realized you all were in Kirtland, and turned around right in front of the old boardroom light down there and came back to the school, and I said, trying to log back on, they told me I had missed it. And I'm like, oh my gosh, but I'm here. I apologize for not planning appropriately.
Well, that was playful harassment, not to shoot any embarrassment to you, but yeah, I drove by there today too, and it looks a mess still. So, go ahead.
Okay, so yeah, Shiprock High wants to propose selling, I guess, get approval for selling posters for each sports with their schedules and team pictures on there throughout the school year for each sport, and those funds will go towards utilizations of each sports as needed, and to supplement the short funds that we have foreseen up to this point. So, and I guess that's, and we're hoping to generate quite a bit of money and with that along the way by selling these schedules and team posters.
I see here, and maybe I'm just confused. You got July 1st, 2024 through June 30th. Oh, okay, that makes sense now.
To June 30th, 2025. So, and that covers each sports program by seasons, of course, fall, winter, and spring.
Okay. Any questions from the board or comments?
No questions for me. Thank you.
Mr. Montoya?
I have none, thank you. I have none, thank you.
I don't have any questions either. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Atsedy.
Oh, thank you.
Appreciate you making the effort to come on.
I'm still at the school working, and I thought I got to at least get on, at least. I'm glad I made it. Thank you so much.
We are too, you bet.
Okay.
Item K, no, excuse me, item L. Ms. Chappelle?
Yes, sir, I'm here, ready to go. I just need to present when you're ready. So what I'd like to do is just read the current regulation, and then after I'm done with that, I'm going to put up on display the potential changes that we can all talk through, and then I'd like to get some further guidance from you all on what changes you'd like made. Is that all right with you, Board Secretary, board members?
Go ahead.
Thank you, sir. So this is Board Policy K-0850 KCD. The title is Public Gifts / Donations to Schools. The board has the authority to accept gifts and donations as may be made to the district or to any school in the district. The board reserves the right to refuse to accept any gift that does not contribute toward the achievement of the goals of this district and the ownership of which would tend to adversely affect the district. Any gift accepted by the board shall become the property of the district, may not be returned without the approval of the board, and is subject to the same controls and regulations as are other properties of the district. The board shall be responsible for the maintenance of any gift it accepts unless otherwise stipulated. The board will make every effort to honor the intent of the donor in its use of the gift, but reserves the right to utilize any gift it accepts in the best interest of the educational program of the district. In no case shall the acceptance of a gift be considered to be an endorsement by the board of a commercial product or business enterprise or institution of learning. The superintendent shall encourage individuals and organizations considering contributions to the schools to consult with the superintendent on the appropriateness of any such gifts. Report to the board all gifts that have been offered to the district for their review and action. Acknowledge the receipt and value of any gift accepted by the district and prepare fitting means as appropriate for recognizing or memorializing gifts to the district. Gifts shall be recorded in appropriate inventory listings and property records. If you could scroll down just a little bit more, Sharon, to the regulation, or I can share that. I'll share that. And just scrolling down, can you all see that okay, or do you need it larger?
Sharon, can you blow that up a little bit? I can't hardly see it online.
I can do that, yeah. Is that better?
That helps.
How about that?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So the component policy to this is K-0861, and it has criteria. To be acceptable, a gift must satisfy the following criteria. It will have a purpose consistent with those of the school. It will be offered by a donor acceptable to the board. It will not begin a program that the board would be unwilling to take over when the gift or grant funds are exhausted. It will not bring undesirable or hidden costs to the school system. It will place no restrictions on the school program. It will not imply endorsement of any business or product. It will not be in conflict with any provision of the school policy or public law. All gifts, grants, and bequests shall become district property and subject to policies of the district. And the statutory authority for this, board members, is NMSA 22-5-4. And that policy provides a specific statutory authority to the board to accept or reject gifts or donations. Any questions so far before we go to the proposed revisions?
I have none.
I don't have any. Maybe just one of my questions I have is just looking at one of the statutes under state law. I think it's a NMSA. Let me look at it. 7-2-18. It's regarding tax credits. Does CCSD, with regard to donations, does the district issue like a tax certificate letter for any donations for people that want to claim it on their taxes? Do we have that protocol?
That's a
in
really
place?
great question, board member. So that would be actually pursuant under this policy. that would be that last bullet point that I read where the superintendent is asked by the policy to provide that type of documentation. We can make that more specific though, if you'd like. Okay, so I'm gonna switch now to the initial recommendations I have for changes. Let me just get that up. And before I start this, in the past, we've had a couple presentations from finance, I want to say 2 years or so ago, where they were asking the board to look at potential changes to this. I might not have there might be some cobwebs there, but that's my recollection. We were looking at other districts to see how they handled donations. Does anyone remember the threshold amounts that were provided back then? My recollection is there was a $500 amount, $1,000, or $5,000 or $10,000 were the amounts being discussed.
5 to 10, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. So I have left that blank in the changes that I'm recommending so that you guys can direct me on what you'd like placed in there. And so I'm going to share the recommendations, and what I'll do is I'll just read the recommended text, and then you all can give me some direction. And is that large enough?
Maybe blow it up some more.
For everybody's eyes but mine, maybe.
Right there.
Okay.
Right there.
Okay. Is that better
That's better.
Yep.
for you guys in the room? All right. So I'll just read through, and then we can stop wherever you guys want me to stop. So the board has statutory authority to accept or reject gifts and donations, which also includes grants and bequests. Just as a quick aside, on the companion regulation, it did include the grants and bequests language. So that's why I brought it up here, so that we would have a good definition in the actual policy of what's meant by gifts and donations. And then continuing, as may be made to the district or to any school in the district, consistent with board policy K0861, and that's where the criteria and considerations are listed. So I think it's important to have that in the policy so that there's no confusion. Determination of whether a gift or donation will be accepted by the district will be made as follows. 1, acceptance or rejection of gifts or donations that have a value of up to, and then whatever amount you guys want in there, may be made by the superintendent consistent with the considerations in board policy K-0861. All gifts or donations either accepted or rejected by the superintendent will be reported to the board on a monthly basis. 2, acceptance or rejection of gifts or donations that have a value of over X amount must be made by the board consistent with the considerations in board policy K-0861. The superintendent will present all offers of gifts or donations along with a recommendation either to accept or reject the offered gifts or donations to the board for the board's consideration. And what that would do is kind of streamline those reports and make it essentially a report from the superintendent. Any gift accepted, oh, actually, this should really say any gift or donation, I'll fix that, accepted by or pursuant to this policy shall become the property of the district, may not be returned without the approval of the board, and is subject to the same laws, controls, regulations, and policies as are other properties owned by the district. The district shall be responsible for the maintenance of any gifts or donations that have been accepted pursuant to this policy unless otherwise stipulated. The board and superintendent will make every effort to honor the intent of the donor in its use of the gift, but reserves the right to utilize any gift it accepts in the best interest of the educational program of the district. In no case shall acceptance of a gift be considered to be an endorsement by the district of a commercial product or business enterprise or institution of learning. For all gifts or donations, regardless of value, the superintendent shall require individuals and organizations considering contributions to the schools to consult with the superintendent on the appropriateness of any such gifts, acknowledge the receipt and value of any gift accepted by the district, and prepare fitting means as appropriate for recognizing or memorializing gifts to the district. And remember, so the acknowledgement of the receipt and value of the gift is what they would need to claim the donation as deductible. Gifts shall be recorded in appropriate inventory listings and property records. And then I'm going to move to the regulation. On the regulation, to be acceptable, a gift or donation must satisfy the following criteria. It will have a purpose consistent with those of the district. If you remember, it used to say the school, but grants, gifts or donations often don't just go to a school, they also go to the district. So the district kind of encompasses both the school and district. For a gift or donation that has a value of up to X amount, it must be offered by a donor acceptable to the superintendent. For a gift or donation that has a value of more than X amount, it must be offered by a donor acceptable to the board. It will not begin a program that the board would be unwilling to take over when the gift or grant funds are exhausted. It will not bring undesirable or hidden costs to the district. It will place no restriction on the district's programs. It will not imply endorsement of any business or product. It will not be in conflict with any provisions of school policy or public law. All gifts and donations, which also includes grants and bequests, shall become district property and be subject to policies of the district. And with that, I stand for questions.
Are there any questions for Ms. Chappelle?
I don't have any questions, thank you.
Mr. So?
Yeah, it looks pretty straightforward.
Mr. Montoya?
Likewise, it's just coming up with that dollar figure for both lines with the separate superintendent and anything over that for the board. So, but I do recall that some numbers that were initially thrown out were $5,000 and $10,000. So, thank you.
Anything else from the board?
I have a quick question for superintendent, just to see if he has any thoughts on the amount that what comes through the doors in terms of donation requests.
You know, that's something that I would really defer to the board on that. I would just say any amount would be fine. I'll deal with it, but I obviously can't do that. I heard the numbers 5,000 to 10,000 before. I don't know what the board would think about those kind of numbers. I'd rather get their input before putting my preference in.
Just for my part, I would grant to the superintendent 0 to 5,000 and the board 5 to 10.
Mr. So?
Yeah, that's a good number. Up to 5,000 and anything over $5,001 by the board.
Board President, Mr. Montoya?
Likewise, again, that 10 number was again a consideration when we first discussed this. But I think reasonably speaking, as Mr. So said, up to 5,000 and then 5,001 would be the consideration of the board. Thank you.
Ms. Haskey?
I'm in agreement.
Thank you.
That sounds good.
You want to go ahead and put that in there, Jermaine?
Yes, sir, I'm doing that as.
Yeah, she's
as we
doing it right
speak.
now.
Ah, I see that, yes.
And just real quick, Sharon, is this an action item? It was just first reading, right?
It's just first read, right? Not an
Yeah,
actual.
I think it's just first reading.
So by the next meeting, it'll be a second read.
Yes, sir.
Then we can go
and
ahead and
the-
vote on this next meeting then?
Yes, sir. Real quick, board member, so do you want me to include a reference to, tax donation? Or is that language good enough?
Yeah,
Let me go
I'm
back.
not sure if it's anywhere or if we need to include that language, because maybe some people may want some sort of like documentation stating that the district will give them a letter stating that the donation is tax deductible on their taxes.
So, when I work with nonprofit issues,
Because I'm not sure if the district does that right now.
Well, let's ask the superintendent. Do you know, superintendent, if we do send a letter acknowledging the receipt and value of the gift on district letterhead?
I haven't done that, but I don't know if it's been done by our finance department. I don't, only if it's something that's asked for.
Okay, so I guess what we could do, board member, so is, I don't know that it's that specific statute that we would reference. It would probably be under the nonprofit section. And also that's federal. So why don't I brainstorm with the superintendent and come back to you with some language on Tuesday?
Okay.
I would suggest leaving it to the individual to request. I don't think we need to just automatically send out papers saying that the X amount can be deducted from your taxes. I think to go ahead and state it in the policy, but leave it up to the individual who makes the donation to request the tax form.
Absolutely, Secretary
Bell?
Wells. Yes, sir.
Option to receive.
Yes, I just wanted to support what Secretary Wells was saying. We would never want to give them legal advice in a letter, but typically how those letters read is, thank you so much for your donation of X amount for educational purposes, and then it's really up to the IRS to determine the deductibility of that, but usually that's sufficient. So my recommendation right now is to leave the language as it is, but I just want to check in with the superintendent and finance.
Any other comments or questions from the board?
I have none.
Yeah, I don't have any, thank you.
Ms. Haskey?
I don't have anything either. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Chappelle.
Yes, sir, thank you.
Moving on to 4, discussion items for September 17th, regular school board meeting.
Mr. Wells, members of the board, if it's appropriate, rather than having to go back through these items again, can we take care of approve all the items that have been brought forth with the exception of F and J and L to help streamline, because we've already gone through it already. I kind of feel in the best interests of efficiency, we can take care of these items tonight.
Just approve the agenda items?
Yeah.
Or I'm okay with that. It doesn't list it on the agenda, but I'm okay with it if it's, well, we can do it and then ratify it if it's not, so.
Yeah.
Just a clarification. Board member, so are you requesting to take action on the items that were already presented?
Yeah,
today?
all the items with the exception of item F and L, because it's just the first read. Because we've already gone through it, it's pretty straightforward.
So, unfortunately, I would not recommend that action because it wasn't noticed as an action item, and it's also the working meeting, so I would not recommend that action.
I believe that we could do that and ratify it with at the next meeting, then we wouldn't have to go over it.
I would, if I may, would much rather err on the side of caution and approve it on Tuesday's meeting, so you're not having someone raising their hand and making a claim of open meetings violation. I understand the point of ratification, but at the same time, there's no need to set a precedence. Thank you.
I think a precedent would be good.
Yeah, so maybe we just change the work session to actually just call it a special meeting or whatever. Anyway, we'll just do report/action items. Otherwise, otherwise we're having to go do double work.
Absolutely, board member. So that would be my recommendation in the future, just to put action item on the agenda. That way, then you have the discretion to either take action or not take action.
Yeah, but yeah, just a thought, like, because right now we've pretty much already covered all this. I mean, if we can take care of it now, let's take care of it. That's my view.
Yes, sir. So my recommendation is for the next working session, if you don't combine them, that we just put potential action on the agenda, and that'll take care of the concern.
Having spoken to other legal counsel concerning go ahead and doing an action and then ratifying it the next one, that is approved without violating any Open Meetings Act.
Okay. Yeah, we can probably wait till next time.
Okay.
Yeah. So maybe for the regular meeting, we put this as like a first order business before we jump into all the reports. I don't know, just a thought. I'm not sure what else is coming up on Tuesday.
We could include that on Tuesday's meeting. What else? Anybody else have anything else for Tuesday? 17.
I would like a report on I believe they did recent WIDA testing. So I would like a presentation on the explanation of WIDA and its importance to the school district.
Are you taking
notes,
Aaron?
Also, a report on the after-school tutoring programs that are being utilized.
I see Mr. Venturino has a hand up.
Thank you, Secretary Wells. I just wanted to get clarification about Mr. Montoya's request about WIDA. Is it the WIDA Access or the WIDA Screener that you were referring to?
Let's do both.
Both. Okay, so the WIDA Access was taken during the spring, and then the screeners are the ones that we had recently conducted within our schools. Yes, okay, we will be prepared. Thank you.
I appreciate that because, again, I know board members hear that and the explanations or the full understanding, I believe, needs to be expressed to the board as a whole and to the general public as well. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you, sir. We will.
Ms. Haskey, do you have something to add?
I do. I would like a report on the updates for the reorganization to include the budget. I know that we had discussions about going into, back in June, or was it May, about how the budget is distributed between each of the programs. I would like an update on how each program is functioning, with the changes, where we're at with the changes, any challenges, barriers, just anything that has to do with the reorganization of CCSD, how that's going. Thank you.
Mr. Soul, do you have anything else?
No, I don't. I guess the only, and I'm not sure if it's ready yet, but do we have any like short cycle assessment data that we can look at or have go over? Or is that not going to be ready till October or so?
I'm gonna ask Leandro about that, and Mr. Dezo. I know that the IMSA, or IMAS as some people say, the first test they took, the beginning of the year assessment, we should have data for that. I don't know how much it tells us, but we have that. We also have, might not be a bad idea to include some of the data from last spring, and to let the board know kind of where folks are with CSI, MRI, that kind of thing. Just a big report on that. But I can see what else we have,
Okay.
ice station data, those kind of things.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else? We'll move on to item 5. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn this meeting.
I will make a motion to adjourn.
Do we have a second?
I will
Second.
second.
Don't knock each other over. Trying to be first. Okay, it has been moved and seconded that we adjourn this meeting. Mr. Montoya?
Yes.
Mr. Soul?
Yes.
Ms. Askey?
Yes.
Myself, yes. This meeting is adjourned.